French rugby season review for 2025, folks. Let's have a look back at the year where France won the Six Nations but dropped in the world rankings and give them a score. What do you guys reckon? Is it an A, B, C, or D year for the French? We'll talk about their record, the highlights and lowlights, the squad use, some of the stats. Do the French really have any kind of key weaknesses? And you guys can let us know your thoughts. So they dropped. They did. They started the year in fourth spot in the world on 88.51. They dropped not too much. They dropped one spot into fifth and dropped to 87.24. It was the tour to New Zealand that I feel like really cost them in world rankings, or you could potentially say they lost to South Africa at home. World rankings wise, the July period is not really kind to France, so they're always a little bit, you feel like, underrepresented in world rankings because they don't tend to gain a lot, or they maybe lose a bit during July when it's not necessarily France's full strength team. But let's start with the Six Nations because they won the thing. Certainly a thing to celebrate for this French squad. They started by smashing Wales at home. Part of Gatland's demise was that first up loss to the French. Obviously, it was the Italian loss that sealed his fate, but it didn't really go well for Gatland's boys early. And then there was a bit of a shock loss away at Twickenham. I mean, not too shocking, but they were like at least 5-point favourites going into that Twickenham game. And obviously, England went on quite the run in 2025, but we didn't know that at the time. But one of the statement games from an English perspective was that last-minute winner against France. So France seemingly were in front in that game, but it ended up losing it kind of at the death, which was a disappointing one for their Six Nations campaign. They did take some of that frustration out on the Italians the next week by putting 70 points on them. And then they had this mission impossible task seemingly of going to Ireland and having to get a win, because the loss to England and Ireland having already beaten England really put Ireland in the driver's seat. But France, with the pressure on, they did it, man. They did it. 42 points to 27 winners over Ireland, and that's despite the fact that Antoine Dupont got injured pretty early on in that game, which would keep him out for the rest of the French season. So a pretty emphatic win. They finished with that home game against Scotland, which could have been a banana skin, but they were able to see them off. So they finished the campaign with a 4-win, 1-loss record, which is the same record as England and the same record as Ireland, but they got 2 more bonus points than Ireland, 1 more bonus point than England, so they are outright winners. And when you look at the points difference, 125 points to the good for France compared to 74 for England and 18 for Ireland. The French were pretty comfortably the best team in the Six Nations. Louis Bielbiere at times was unplayable. He was on absolute fire going on, was like 8-try scoring run, which is pretty incredible stuff. So they start the year, like, it's not a grand slam, but it's still a pretty good win, especially seeing as they were kind of having to come from behind in terms of that early loss to England. Then you get the tour to New Zealand, which is the B team, for want of a better word. Some French fans in the lead up to it told me it was more like a C team or a B- team or whatever you want to call it. It was certainly far from the first choice French players on tour, but we're used to this in July. Top 14 commitments mean you're not going to see these, big gun players from the likes of Toulouse and Bordeaux and whatnot. They're not going to be traveling in July all the way down to New Zealand. They also have club commitments. So they go on this tour and they lose all 3 games, which is, I think, to be expected. The New Zealand media really made a big deal, and New Zealand rugby as well, a big deal about this French team not being a full-strength team, which I did find surprising because it's not an unusual one for France not to have the top guys available. But they almost did it in that first game. It was only 31-27. That was the highlight of that tour from a French perspective, I suppose. Although from a New Zealand perspective, I do put it into consideration that's the All Blacks' first game of the year. Like, we got the flip side of it from an All Blacks point of view when we beat Ireland in Chicago, because that was their first game of the year. Sometimes you're not at your best in your first game. The second game was a lot more emphatic, 43-17 win to the All Blacks, and the third game's kind of in the middle, 29-19. So still some big positives to take from that campaign to New Zealand, but like in world rankings terms, if you're just simply looking at wins and losses, it was an unsuccessful tour because they didn't get any wins. It hurts the rankings, but they did get to give opportunities to a bunch of inexperienced players on the tour. So from that perspective, it is successful. Then we get to November. And again, first game up, South Africa. It might have been nicer from a French perspective to have the South Africa game after France has played Fiji, after France has played Australia. But no, it was South Africa first up. And it's kind of a brutal one because South Africa had a red card, a permanent red card, for a long period of that game. And France had an early lead. They led this game for like an hour. And in the final 20, France were not good enough to keep up with the Springboks. Springboks are clearly the best team in the world right now. But the fact that they had a man down and were away from home and still managed to beat the French side has got to be really disappointing from a French point of view. So that game was a big low light. Then you get the win over Fiji, which I guess looks comfortable enough on paper. But remember, it was a big lead. Fiji tied it up, and then France went on to kind of win it a second time. And then against Australia, a really high-scoring one, 48? 33 or 46-33? It was a couple of lead changes in that game. That game was really quite entertaining. So, yeah, mixed from the French guys. Again, with no Dupont. So, how they have him come back from injury, if Intermac's going to get back to his full strength, is going to be really an interesting one to watch with the squad, because the injuries that Intermac's come back from, that Dupont's coming back from, kind of career-threatening injuries. So not every guy gets back to 100%. Obviously, BLBRA has been the kind of standout man. He got a nomination for World Player of the Year, and I think pretty rightly so. He won Six Nations Player of the Year. Stats. It's interesting that a few areas are a little bit worse than 2024. Like the defenders beaten number is a little bit lower. Their lineout is fantastic. The French lineout is in the 90s. It's certainly one of the best lineouts in World Rugby, and it would be even better if you took out the New Zealand results, where the New Zealand games were a little bit scratchy. But when the first team is playing, their lineout success rate is quite incredible. Probably the best of all the Tier 1 teams. And weirdly with France, they also seem to sometimes play better when they're on kind of low possession. We saw that a couple of years ago. I think that year they won the Six Nations last time. Like, they love playing low possession rugby. Possession is not a particularly dominant stat in terms of indicating who wins or loses a game. Some teams like high possession, like the Andy Farrell team of old with the quick recycle ball, loves possession. The South Africans tend to like possession, but France still continue to operate pretty well when they don't have the ball. They like putting the ball behind teams and seeing what their team can do. So, I don't know, what kind of grade do you give this French team? If all you really care about is the Six Nations, you got to give them some kind of A. But I'm going to go kind of in the middle by saying it's a B for the French. Winning the Six Nations starts you at an A. The New Zealand tour was a mixed bag, so it kind of drops you down maybe to like an A-. You were expected to lose. You got close in one game. And then the November period, the way that game was lost to South Africa, I think probably has to drop you down a bit. And the fact that they still seem a little bit vulnerable by being scored upon quite a lot by teams like Italy, even though they got pumped, still scored 24 points against France. Fiji scored 21, Australia scored 33. So even in some of their big wins, they're conceding quite a few points. So it's been a bit of a mixed record. I do want to give them some credit for showing some real fortitude for coming back after losing that game to England in the Six Nations, where it felt like the Six Nations campaign was going to be really hard work, but they did it in the end. So yeah, I'll give them a B. You guys let me know your thoughts. Is that too harsh? Is that too generous? I am on holiday at the moment, which is why this video, which is recorded in late December 2025, is going up now in January. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm happy to stay in touch with you guys. I'll have a read of the comments when I get back from a holiday. If you guys share your thoughts down there, I'll have a read a bit later. But yeah, you guys take care of yourselves. Enjoy your new year. And yes, I will talk to you guys again soon. See you later.